Hello everyone, welcome to ABAS Seasonal Bonsai Series, March. Take 1. Okay, here we are with our March series of our Seasonal Bonsai Series. And this month, we're going to check in with Carmen and see what's happened with our trident maples in the last month. And we'll get started on our coniferous species, Junipers chinensis, shimpakus. So we'll start with Carmen giving us a little update on the trident. So, Carmen.
Here are our 4 tridents, and it's March, and they're all leafing out. Yay! So we have positive things to say about all of them. Our first one is our little stick, and here's what we've got. And you can see we have buds down here, so this is good. This is going to be a turn, so we'll have to have a branch here. And then as you go out, there's a node, there's a node, there's a node, and then you see how it stretches out. And this is what maples do. I'm not going to do anything with this yet because if I tried to wire it, I would break it. So I'm perfectly happy with this as it is. We're going to fertilize it and good to go. Our second one is the one we just chopped to death, and our root grafts are all budding out. This one barely, but there are buds, so it looks like everyone survived. Once it makes the bud out, you know you're safe. If it's going to die, it's going to die pretty quickly. So going up, and every place we cut, here they are. And you notice the apex isn't all that strong because it should be the strongest part. But all of the energy in this trunk in this fall and winter when we took the leaves off, these were really strong branches. And this is where it's pushing. So you can see that's the strongest. There's a little bud there. Little buds are coming out a little bit on the trunk. And then we have the apex, which is not so strong. But give it time, and it's going to take off, which is what I would expect to happen. But the tree doesn't know that yet. It's going to get there. But right now it's pushing where it expected there to be growth. Our third maple, the Challenger, it was kind of weak, and look at it now. Everything's coming out. Looks good. All of this down in here, you can see this layer right here, and then this was all the new growth from last year. So from here to here, new. And we're going to let this just keep going. This is going to be our main trunk. So this is the one that is absolutely going to grow as much as possible. And in May, we will probably cut the others back, but this will continue because that's where I want the strength. So that's how I control what's happening somewhat on this tree. And you can also see the thread grafts on this, the root grafts, are also, is this one alive? I believe I see buds. Yeah, down in here. That one's going to be okay. So those have been successful. And then we have Renee's tree, and this is developed, and here you see the difference. We did nothing to this in January, and it's very even all the way through. This is a tiny bit stronger, but insignificant. So this is what you are aiming for. And then this down here is the weakest part, but we've got it exposed. There's no branches directly over it, so this is going to get sun. This is what we want to get stronger. And we've got on our sacrifice branch that we've kept cutting back, there's a little bud. So that's what we're going to be using in the future. So this is a very successful, that's what you want your tree to look like in the spring. Okay.
Okay, so here we are. We're going to start with our work on our coniferous species, Junipers chinensis, aka shimpakus. We have several here in various stages of development. We have our cuttings. These are cuttings that I have done. Um, they've been in development for about 5 years now, but you can see how little, how slowly they grow. So it's going to take a long time for this to actually get into something that you can start working on as a bonsai. So these are our cuttings. Most junipers, most shimpaku junipers are started in this way from cuttings. They start really well, they root easily. So most of the shimpakus you see are started from cuttings. Our next subject is our pre-bonsai. This has been field grown and is in a nursery container. This is from Dennis Makashima's collection. This tree has been focused on trunk development. There's been very little done as far as development of the primary, secondary branches and pad formation. It's all been focused on the trunk. So that's where we're going to start with this guy. Next, our next subject is our more intermediate stage tree. This is Carmen Scott's tree. It's got a nice trunk development. She has a beautiful series of photographs, so she has a progression that she will share with you a little bit later in the program to show the development process of this tree. These two trees are our more refined trees. I'm using two of them right now just to give you an idea of the desired characteristics in a juniper. This tree has a beautiful movement, shari, lifelines are developing. It has some primary branch development, but it is a little bit weaker in the branches are a little bit weaker. These are going to take a lot more time to develop, but it does have a beautiful trunk on it, and it is starting to get the branch development and pad development. This tree is a literati style. This tree, when it was started, there was no intention of putting movement into the trunk, which would have been very nice if the person that started this tree had actually put some movement into the trunk. So it doesn't have a very interesting trunk. But the reason I'm using this one is because it has very nicely developed primary, secondary, and tertiary branching. So it gives you an idea of the development process for the branches and the pad formation. We're getting a lot of nice development in the pads. So these are our subjects that we're going to be working with over the next year. Okay, so now that I've introduced you to our subjects, now we're going to go through the development process for each individual tree, what we're going to do to them this year to develop them and bring them along in their bonsai journey. So we have our two very young cuttings here, and we ask ourselves, what are we going to do to these this year? About the only thing we can do to these is repot them, put some wire on them, and let them grow. I have two of them here because this tree, this little guy, when I started it as a cutting, I actually put some movement into it with wire. So it's already got some movement started. So we'll repot this guy, put some more wire on it, and give this a little bit more movement. This one you can see was started as a cutting. Nothing was done to the trunk to start movement development in the tree. This is probably not going to have movement because it's at this point it's way too hardened off in the trunk to add any development. So that's just a suggestion to people. If you're interested in movement, you got to do that very early, right after the tree is started and rooted, when it's a very young cutting. So these two guys, the only thing we're going to do to them this year, we're going to repot them and fertilize them, put a little wire on them, and let them grow.
Are they healthy? And how do you know?
They are healthy. Yes, they are, because we have nice dark green foliage. we have a lot of spiky growth. See this nice spiky growth here? That means this tree is really healthy. It's throwing out really nice, strong new growth on it. So these guys are healthy. We can do whatever we need to do to these at this point, because they're ready to accept some serious manipulation and torture. Okay, so the first thing we're going to repot is going to be our little 5-year-old cutting. We're going to move this along by putting it in a larger pot. Larger terracotta pot is a growing pot. These are great for just keeping the tree healthy and letting it grow. You can also use things like pond baskets or the strainers and things like that. I didn't happen to have one, so I'm just going to go with a plain old terracotta pot. Soil we're going to use is going to be our traditional Akadama Pamaslava mixture, 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. And I'm going to use a smaller size. This is traditional conifer mix. I'm going to put a drainage layer in. So let's take this little guy out of here and see what we got. Looks like there's a nice root mass there. So we're just going to take this out. The great thing about the repot is you can start working on your roots. It's really important when you're developing a tree to get the roots going out, flowing out away from the trunk. A lot of the nursery material you get will have roots that are spiraling around because they've not taken the time to direct the roots when they're repotting. So that's a very important thing for the repot. Not only to get it into a larger pot so they can grow well, but also to work on those roots to get them going in the right direction. So we're just going to kind of get all this old soil out of here. Take a look for roots that we might want to correct at this stage.
How long would you guess it's been in that pot?
It has been in that pot about 3 years. The cuttings, I did cuttings and had them in a, just a larger pot. I had about 5 or 6 cuttings in one pot. So then when I up-potted them, it was a couple years from the cutting stage to getting it into its own individual pot. So it's been about 3 years in that pot. In all actuality, we're not really going to see a lot of change in this tree over the next year, but that's a good thing too. You can see how long it takes to develop a tree. Okay, see here we have a large root here. This is a good opportunity to start pruning the roots and getting fine roots developing. Got this big root here.
Okay.
So we'll take this opportunity to cut this back so we can get finer roots developing. Cut that off. If you let that grow, it'll just, since it's kind of like letting the top of the tree grow. If you have a root like this and you just let it grow, it's kind of like letting the apex run on a tree. It's just going to get really thick, really fast, and it's going to take most of the energy, and it will just become a problem in the future. One thing nice about starting material from a cutting is that you can control the roots from the very get-go. Can direct them in the right directions, keep them from getting too big. Oops. So, I'm gonna look under here, see if there's anything that we need to take out. Oops, there's my wire. You can see we have, pretty nice fine root mass. I don't see anything really big and ugly in there that's going to cause us problems in the future. So I'm just going to take this little guy and put him in the pot. So I'm going to put a drainage layer in. We have some large pumice here that we're going to use in the bottom for a drainage layer. And then we're going to put a layer of our potting soil.
What percentage and what is it?
Oh, I say the 30, 30, 30, 30? I think I already said that. Would you hand me the Dr. Earth? Oh, it's right behind me. Ah, okay. I like to put a little bit of this Dr. Earth starter fertilizer in when I repot. The reason is it's low nitrogen, but it's also got a lot of microbes and micronutrients and stuff in it. And it just kind of, I feel like it just sort of recharges the soil. It kind of gets a jump start on the development of the microbiome in the potting soil. So I just put a little sprinkle of that in to kind of recharge it. Let's see where we are here. A little bit more fertilizer. A little bit more soil. Always make a little pile in the middle. Kind of squish it down on there. Push the soil up under the root ball. I need a pigtail. Pigtail.
Can you explain about why you need a pigtail?
Well, I guess I could explain that there are various ways of tying trees into pots. A lot of it depends on the holes, the hole arrangement on the bottom of the pot, and how well developed the root mass is. When you have a tree that does not have a good root mass on it, and you need more anchor points, 4-point tie is really good because then you make a little kind of wire basket around it. So we're going to go here to here. That's what I want. Yeah, thank you.
I didn't want to give you mine.
And when we're tightening the wires on this little guy, on any tree, when you're doing a repot and you're tightening the wires, you pull, get the excess slack out of the wire, and then twist. So it's always kind of pull and twist motion. Pull and twist motion. And we're going to go from here to here. Pull, twist, pull, twist, pull, twist. And why do we wire trees in pots? The reason is, number one is, if a tree's moving around in a pot, if there's a lot of motion, like a big tree in the ground, they develop big, massive roots to anchor them into the ground, to keep the wind from blowing them over and stuff like that. But when we want a bonsai, we want fine roots. We want a fine, tight root mass. So we can grow them in smaller containers. You want a lot of fine roots for absorbing nutrients and feeding the tree. If you have one big, massive root, that doesn't really supply a lot of energy to the tree. Fine roots will give you much better health to the tree in a small pot. And the idea is to get this guy so that eventually, sometime along the road, we can put it in a nice shallow bonsai pot. And in order to do that, we have to have a lot of nice fine roots on it. So wiring the tree in actually anchors the tree, so the tree will actually produce finer roots.
Is this the last one? Yeah, this is the last one.
Pull, twist. So now it's anchored in there, it's stable, and it will develop finer roots and get us started on our little bonsai journey. So now we'll finish off the soil. Work it in a little bit. A little bit more soil, a little more soil. Okay. So, and I also, if you'll notice, I put some wire on it before I repotted it. It's a little easier before you repot to put wire on it, but I wanted to just add a little more movement to the branches, so as it grows and these things harden off, they'll have some movement to them. So we're just going to put a little movement into these guys for the future. For the future. This is for the future. And you don't want, I've seen several of our members have purchased trees that have had, someone's taken, something with a straight trunk like this. And then they've added a lot of like really curlicue kind of movement out in the branches. Trunk straight, branches have all this curlicue movement, and it just looks very, very weird. So just as a cautionary thing for you guys to be thinking about, if you're buying a tree that you're looking for movement, you want to look at the trunk first. That's the very first thing you look at when you're buying a tree. Don't fall for something that has a lot of weird movement in the branches when there's no movement in the trunk. So for this little guy, we're putting movement in the trunk. That's the first place you want to develop the movement. And then the second place is going to be into the branches. So we're putting some movement into the branches, and you don't want that corkscrew thing that looks like a spring off of a bed spring or something like that. You want a little bit of natural movement in it. And it's, it isn't always the same. It's a little bit, maybe tighter in some areas, looser in other areas. So
You're also twisting it.
yeah, and twisting it. So if you notice, when I put the initial wire on this, I actually put a twist in the trunk. So that's why, at this stage, it's so important to get that little twist in there, because you'll never get it in there later on in the development. It's got to be done now. It's got to be done now. Pliers.
And did you use aluminum or copper wire?
I used copper. This is, traditionally you use copper on a conifer because it can stay, copper, to explain the annealing process, and copper's softer when you put it on, and then it hardens as, like, when I'm moving it here, when I'm doing this twisting, this was soft when I first put it on, but as I move this, that copper gets harder and harder. So it actually holds better than aluminum for a smaller diameter wire. and it can stay on longer. It holds better. I just grab this and kind of twist, and that puts a twist in the branch. So that's really all we're going to do right now for this one. So next we'll start on our pre-bonsai. Okay, our next subject, our pre-bonsai. This is the Dennis Makashima tree. This tree is also nice and healthy. It's got good spiky growth on it. So whatever we do to this tree's ready to tolerate repotting and some initial wiring. So for this year, actually for this month, we're just going to repot it now, get it into a growing pot, start some root work on it, fertilize it, and let it grow. And then this summer, we'll take another look at it and see what else we can do. Okay, so now we're going to repot our pre-bonsai. It's nursery container, coming out of a nursery container. When you're going from a nursery container into bonsai soil, you never know what you're going to find. So we're looking at this root ball. You can see we have a big hole here. Probably not the best thing for this tree. Was obviously, not repotted real well. It wasn't a very conscientious repot when they put it in the container. But you never know what you're going to find when you go from a nursery container into a bonsai pod. First thing we consider is the fact that it is in nursery soil. So we're going to have to transition this tree from nursery soil into bonsai soil. With conifers, you cannot bare root them like you can deciduous. If I were working on a trident maple or a Japanese maple, I could take all the soil off, down to the bare roots and repot it, and it would be fine. Get rid of all of that nursery soil to begin with. But with conifers, you can't do that. So we're going to probably take about half the soil off of this and replace it with the bonsai soil. And the next time we repot, we'll do the other half. So first thing you do when you're taking it out of a nursery container is you need to find the nabari. A lot of times when you get a nursery, by nursery stock, they have the soil planted way up on the trunk of the tree. And so the nabari is way down below. So the first thing you do, taking it out of that nursery container, is work down at the top of that root mass to find the nabari. And it looks like, this one is pretty good. It doesn't look like it was planted really deep in the pot. You can see the roots here, the nabari here. So this is probably, going to be the base of our tree, what we can see right here. So that's all good. So then next step is to go to the bottom. And where is my root hook? I thought over there, Carmen, on the end of the table, other table, that table. Yeah, that one. Thank you. That table. Too many tables in here. So anyway, right now you can see there's a lot of nice healthy roots here. Looks like a healthy tree, so it will be able to handle what we're going to do to it. Repotting is very stressful. Maybe I'll get the other big. I'm going to get. Let's get the big guy. We're going to get the big guy. Sometimes for nursery material, you need something a little more aggressive. Yeah. So this one, we can really work the.
I got it. Let me know if you want me to turn it.
Ah!
Whee!
I got
in your eye?
I got dirt in my eye. Eek! I need my safety goggles.
There's mud in your eye. Turn it.
Yep. We'll just take about a third of this off and see what we've got as far as roots. See if there's any aggressive roots that we need to address.
Big splat of mud on the iPhone.
On the
iPhone
lens. Should have my safety goggles on.
I have glasses. I don't feel safe.
Let's see what we got for roots here. I'm looking at the soil. There's a lot of pumice and stuff in it, so actually it's not such a bad soil.
Is that bonsai soil?
I think it's pumice mixed with some kind of potting soil,
okay.
But at least it's got a lot of pumice in it. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to trim off the roots on the bottom here. Okay. So get the dirt out of my face and out of my eyes. So let's see what we've got here for, whoops, I guess that root was rotten. It just broke right off. So I'm going to just go ahead and take it off. Looks like, is it all dead? Hope not.
It's coming from
there. I hope that root's still alive. Doesn't look like it's still alive though. Dang it. So this is all dead. I'm cutting off these dead roots here. See, that's all dead too. So we're going to cut that off. Hopefully there's something living back in there, because I'd love to keep this root alive on this side, because that's kind of the anchor for the design of this tree.
You have,
yeah, all of these roots here. This one looks like it's dead here. This looks like it's still alive out in here though, which is good, even if that's dead. So okay, so you've worked off the bottom of the root ball. Prune off a little, cut off a few more of these roots. I have a pretty good sized root here. I'm going to cut this back. These big roots are the things that you really need to start working on, working them back, getting them to ramify. Need the roots to ramify just like you need the top of the tree to ramify.
And it's sticking straight down.
So that if you let that get bigger and thicker and harder, it's just going to cause problems in the future. So I'm going to go through here, and these big roots that are sticking down, I'm going to cut these guys back. Whoops, what's this here? Let's take a oh dear.
What the hell? Oh. And then it kind of goes.
See, there's this big, these are the kind of things that you need to really start addressing early. You see this big root coming across here? We're going to have to take part of that off. Probably a big part of that off. I don't know which way is.
Where does it go?
Where is it coming from, and where is it going? At this point, we're not sure. So let's see if we can figure out which way this root's going. I think it's going that way.
Going across.
It's going across that way. So it's going in this direction.
And then it takes a turn.
And then it takes another turn and another turn
and
there.
That's dead.
Is that dead?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That's dead.
That's dead.
The whole thing's probably dead.
The whole thing is probably dead. Okay, well, that's a good thing. Now I need my bigger cutters.
Okay, where
the big guys, root cutters in the toolbox on the floor, behind you, bottom, in the back.
Big. Okay,
So we're going to go ahead and take this off.
It's fine.
It's still alive. Well, it will probably bud out from where we cut it off. But it's big anyway. We don't really want that big, huge root down here.
Yeah.
Anything else in here that's a surprise? Any other surprises? There's still some big roots sticking down here like this. I guess that this was probably a field-grown tree that was dug up and put in a nursery pot. And so it looks like they've already done some work on cutting some of the big roots back, but we're going to do a little bit more. Oops, let me use this big guy. Let's use the big guy.
Okay.
Oh, that was coming off. Was that coming off of that other one?
I'm not sure.
No.
No,
But we're going to take a little bit more. Whoops, there's that other big one. This is another big one.
Okay.
So let's go ahead and cut this back.
In some ways, that's a good thing. At least there's multiple.
Mm-hmm. So there's that. Start working it down. Oops, here's another one. We're going to cut this back. This big guy.
You're getting close up to the surface now.
Yep.
So that's good.
Working it up. So we're going to shrink the root, the root mass. We're going to shrink it so that it's a shallower. So eventually we can get this into a shallower bonsai pot. Yep. I think I'm running into another massive root.
A layer. It's like you cut off. Yeah, there's a couple. There's one.
Yeah, see, this isn't. We're getting into some of the native soil. It's different from the soil that was in the bottom of the pot. We're getting into some of the more like loamy, wet soil that was probably part of the original when it was taken out of the ground and put in a pot. So this is what we're going to have to work back. Take about a third of this off. I'm going to cut these back. And that's about as far as I'm going to go for now on the bottom. We kind of know what we're dealing with here. Oops, what's that? Ooh, there's something big right there.
See right there. This is flip it.
Flip it this way. There's something very large right there.
There.
Something very large right there. What is that? Oh boy.
For our depth, it probably needs to come off.
It needs to come off. Yes, it does.
It's going from up here. It's there, and there, and there. It's one big
root, isn't it? Is it coming off? Which way is it going? Is it going?
If you go from the top, you might.
Let's work it from the top.
Yeah, let's find out.
Let's take, well, since we have to take a third of this soil off anyway, we have this big root right here. Let's go ahead and work this section out, and then we'll see what we got there. So let's work out this stuff. I need my chopstick. I hope I don't. See, there's a lot of big roots here. Over time, repotting, on a regular basis and doing the root pruning and working the roots, this will eventually become a nice, fine, compact root mass, which is what you're going for. Right now we have, see all of these big roots in here? This is typical nursery stuff, what you're going to have to deal with. So, as Peter T. was telling me, if you take something like this with these kinds of roots, the time that it takes to get from this to something more refined that you can get into a bonsai pot is probably, 5 years. If you buy something that's already been in a bonsai pot and worked and root pruned and stuff like that and prepared as a bonsai, you save yourself a lot of time. So that's something to keep in mind when you're looking at material. When you get a piece of nursery material, it's going to take a lot longer to develop that tree into a bonsai. Just something to keep in mind when you're shopping. See, it's just all these big roots. Oh boy. Which way is this one going?
Well, and then on this side.
Oh, you're taking that side off?
Well, yeah. And then on this side, you can tell where it was probably potted right flat against something because now it's going straight down. It took a dive and there's very little root on this side. You don't have this nice stretch, so that's also an issue.
Let's just focus on this part now, Carmen. We're just going to take about half of it off, so we're going to leave this and take this off. And this is where this big ugly root is, so I wanted to kind of clear out this so we can see where that, where that big horrible root is.
We have a little bit of curving around roots too.
Lots of curving around roots.
And that's why I kind of check them on the side.
Can you see? You need more light on there, Dodie, or is that good for you? Let's see where this monstrosity comes from. If it's coming from up here. Wow.
Where's it? So
it's coming. It looks
there,
like it's
goes that way.
Wow.
It also goes, and then it goes, kind of goes away there.
It's going in this, kind of going in this direction then?
There's nothing right here. It's curving back up. And there's a huge there.
Yeah, well, this is the typical nursery. You never know.
But you can't treat this like a where we sat there.
And just bare rooted. No, I can't do that. Can't do that with this one, unfortunately. These are a little touchier. Luckily, shimpakus in the juniper group, shimpakus are a little hardier than a lot of them. So you can be a slightly more aggressive with the roots on the repot.
Every species is different.
Yep, and every species is different. Well, let's see here. Should I just go ahead and bite the bullet and cut this big chunk off?
So going down through here, is it this?
Is it this? Holy moly.
What is it?
Or is it this? There's a big one coming off here. Big one's coming off everywhere.
Yes. Okay.
Okay, so let's flip it over again and see.
All right, so that's right next to the big root.
So this, where the hell? Oh, that must be this thing. This.
Wait.
This here.
That's what I thought.
Yep, this is this.
Let's say, okay, so see where that's going through right there?
Yep, this is
that's
this.
Right there.
Yep, that's this. This big chunk right here. Oh my goodness.
So.
Oh my goodness. Well, we got to take some of it off.
Right.
We'll start with taking some of it off. I think it's just, is that coming off there? Yeah, I guess it is, huh? Well, I'm going to bite the bullet and take this chunk off right here.
All right. So, wait. That doesn't go through that root right there. We already cut this one off.
Yep, that's all part of this big monstrous thing.
And then see this root going right, that comes from up here, this little root. I think you probably would like to save that.
I'm looking at, a lot of these roots are dead, actually.
Wonderful.
Yeah, a lot of these roots are dead.
which means
This
we
one
may,
is still alive. This is still alive.
and how can you tell? Because it all looks black.
Well, if you go out here, you can see that it's got some little, the roots are starting to grow. It's got little light colored tips on it,
As opposed to something like
as opposed
that.
to something like this that has nothing.
Yeah, and that, oops. Yeah, but that's alive.
Dead.
This is dead.
That's it. And you can see here, there. See, this is growing in here. You can see the new fleshy root there. So this is dead. So we might as well take it off.
Wow, that's dead.
A lot of these roots are dead. So that's problematic. Doesn't give us a lot of options here. That's dead too, huh? So I guess if we're going to be a little conservative, we're going to probably just take part of this off for now and let it develop some more roots.
Oh, we saw this one.
This one's dead.
Point them out and all.
That's dead.
Okay.
That's dead.
That's dead. Angle.
Do you want scissors or?
Now this.
Is that better?
Right angle.
Okay, well, let's get the big guys. Let's get the big cutters, and let's take part of this root mass off here. Well,
wow, that's exciting.
That's exciting.
It's a start.
It's a start.
You're cutting that off, yeah.
And then we're going to cut this guy off. Probably going to have a little more attached to it.
Satisfying little snap there.
See if all the roots on the tree come.
I'm going to move it. I'm going to shift it over.
Holy moly. See, this wraps way around.
Oh, this is that's dead.
See, this wraps all the way back around. Comes from the bottom, wraps up around.
And?
So is it going in that direction?
Let your hand go. Okay.
This is why the tree needs to be healthy. Yeah. What we're doing to this tree is very stressful.
Okay, so there it is. There it is.
If this were not a healthy tree.
You might, okay, right? And then it's curving, it splits. Wait, move it. Give it a little move, a jiggle.
And then it comes down here, so there.
And then there's a little branch that goes up that way.
And then another branch that goes off that way.
So you can
and
cut
comes
that.
Up that way. Oh my goodness. So I'm going to take this part off because we can just pull that out. And then.
Where is that? That, and then that's going off.
And it's got another branch going off toward the back. Yep, this is why. Whoops.
All right. Fine.
This is why we need healthy trees.
Well, where is it?
Where is it going? It goes all the way back underneath. It's like Rubik's Cube. We're dealing with Rubik's Cube here. There's a huge part that goes just right back underneath the whole tree. Well, you know what? I'm just going to cut it off here for now because I don't want to do any more, disturb any more of the roots. So anyway, there we go.
So we have two little.
Then we have two more.
And then I can see where it's moving right there.
It's coming up to the top.
And this is the problem. I've got all these roots. Well, if something curves around that comes up, you could lose
half or even all of the roots.
Yeah.
This reminds me of repotting your maple.
Yeah.
See, these are all dead. There's a lot of dead roots in here.
But it's healthy, so.
But the tree's healthy. That's the important thing.
It's dealt with it. I don't think there's a whole lot left. It's this. No.
See, this looks all dead too. There's a lot of dead roots. Oh my goodness.
Ah, I found it, Renee.
You did?
So it's
Eureka!
right. Got it?
I was just cutting that one dead root off.
It's right there. It's that.
And it goes back under the tree.
Uh-huh.
Oh my goodness.
See?
Oh my goodness.
So you might as well at least cut it
Back up into there.
right there. Okay. And it's still going.
And it's still going. We don't want to do too much more. I mean, we've done a lot to this root mass. We don't want to overdo it. So we may just have to be satisfied with.
Well, it's still a lot. We're still setting it up.
Yeah, we're getting rid of some of the stuff. Well, let's go and look for, get the dead stuff out if there's more dead roots in here that we need to get out. I don't know. That doesn't look like it's dead, but it hasn't really started to grow yet. These have started to grow. You can see this is where you, oops. Well, too bad that isn't still attached. But you can see here where this root is starting to throw out feeder roots up here. See those little fleshy roots coming out there? So this one is still alive. That's good. And like that is not. Let's just cut it off. Okay. So we've done a lot of work on this tree. We probably want to say enough.
Right?
Say enough. It's hard to say. It's hard to stop.
Stop.
But, we don't want to, we've already taken off a lot, so we really don't want to take off anymore. We want to preserve these. Okay, so now we need to choose a pot for it. I wasn't really sure what pot I needed to get the tree out of the nursery container, take a look at the roots to see what we actually had for, what kind of a pot we could get it into. So we had several choices, and I'm thinking we have a mica pot. That might be a little bit small, huh?
It fits.
It fits, but it's a little small.
For what we want the pot to do.
That might be a little small. This is a terracotta pot. It's a lot larger. The thing that I don't like about this one is it's got this reverse lip here, which makes it difficult getting the tree in and out of it. But it's, a much better size. Gives it a lot more room for the roots to grow. Can get it in there, get it at the right angle. And the other thing was a square one, but I don't think that's going to work. I don't think that one's really going to work. Well, I guess it would work, huh?
So, the question do you know where the front is?
The front's going to be here. We're going to tip it up a little bit, change the angle a bit. Yeah, when we repot it, in evaluating the tree, decided that it would look better if it was more upright rather than more slanted. So we're going to change the angle to being a little more upright. You like this better? Yeah.
As long as you know where the front is, then front to back is going to be.
Yep.
You have enough room for the roots.
And it's probably going to be in a square pot anyway, so it'll be setting it up for the future. Yep. Okay, so we're going to go with this pot. It's got plenty of room for the roots to grow. It's a square pot, and this tree, eventually, I can see this tree being in a square pot. I mean a rectangle. So we'll put it in a rectangle pot and get it set up for root development in a rectangle pot. And then somewhere along the line, we can put it into a nicer, smaller pot, and it'll look very cool.
So I'm going to prep this, and we'll come back.
Go. Okay, so we've got the pot prepared. We've decided on the rectangular pot because this tree eventually, when it goes into a good bonsai pot, it's going to be a rectangle. So it's good to actually start the training as early as possible in that shape of a pot. We're using a 4-point tie. Luckily, this pot that we're putting it in has 4 nice holes around the outer edge. So that gives us a really good way to anchor the tree into the pot. So we have our pot ready to go. First thing we're going to do, we've removed probably a little more soil than we thought we would. But tree's healthy, hopefully it can handle it. We'll start by putting a drainage layer in the pot.
Pumice?
This is a large size pumice that we're using for our drainage layer. And then we're going to put a layer of soil. We're using the standard 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 Akadama lava pumice, medium size. That technically will help it grow faster to be in a larger size soil. Put a fine layer of the potting soil over the drainage layer. Let's see how it sits in there.
Do we have any?
We have lots of. This is one of the problems going from a nursery container to a bonsai pot. You have a lot of very coarse roots. There's a lot of holes and stuff in the bottom here. We're going to have to be very conscientious about working the soil. I'm going to put a. Let's see where that sits right now. Let's see where that sits in the pot. Yeah. So we're going to put. Is right in there.
There.
I'm going to put a little.
There's a hole back here.
There's holes everywhere.
It'll be obvious when the chopstick hits it.
So I'm going to put not a really big mound in there. In fact, I'm going to take some of this up from the bottom.
It'll work itself when you.
We do this mound in here because then we can set the tree on it and work it so that will force some of the bonsai soil up into the holes that are in the bottom of the root mass.
Okay.
See where oops. We need to rotate it this way. It's very important now to get it at the right angle in the pot. So when we're working on the tree, everything that we do to the tree will be in relation to the trunk. So we want to make sure we have that trunk at the right angle. So when we do the work, we're doing it for the future of the tree. Another dead root. Yep, it's another dead root. Here, Carmen.
Thanks.
There's just a lot of dead roots. Yeah, it's kind of, I guess, when it was taken out. So I'm going to turn it this way just a bit so I can kind of get a look at where I want it in the pot and the angle that I want it at. Kind of want it at that angle. Would you hold the pot, Carmen? Hold the pot. Whoops. Do what you got to do. I'm going to work this into the. I'm going to make sure I get it at the right angle and the right place in the pot. Come this way a bit.
Yeah. And then, oops, this side seems.
It's going to be a little bit high because we're tipping it. We'll, probably going to have to put some sphagnum on there. Some of these roots will probably come off anyway. What did I say? Stop? No more? Well, there we go.
They're going to die anyway if they're sticking out far enough.
Yeah.
Probably. Yeah, I'm going to cut that. Thank you. Okay. That'll help.
I don't want to do this one yet. I could do this one. These are going to have to come off eventually because they're kind of going up. But for now, we don't want to take any more roots off this tree. So let's.
What do you want to do? I can turn it around if you want to talk about on the side.
Well, I'm tipping it up. I'm changing the angle, and the problem when you change the angle of a tree, you have to change the angle of the root ball. So one side's going to pull up, the other side's going to go down. So this side is kind of pulling up a little bit. It's going to be a little higher than we really want it. In the future, we're going to go through, probably take these higher roots off here. But we've done so much root work on this now, we're not going to do it at this point. We're going to leave those there and just let it grow. So I wanted to hold the pot, Carmen. Could you hold the pot, please? Thank you. I wanted to move it this way a little bit more. Yeah, that's better.
You can add some soil and then readjust.
Yeah,
I'll hold it if you want to add.
Make sure I'm getting it at the right angle.
It's like you want to look at it from the side, like from here to here, front to back. Good.
Let me get it at the right angle. Just about like that.
Got it. Okay.
Okay.
Especially here.
Working that in. When we're adding soil to something like this, we have to add it a little at a time and work it into the roots. If you try to add too much soil at once, you'll end up with big holes. So we're going to do a little at a time here and work it in.
Watch them all disappear. there they go. They're gone.
Do you want to be able to get to that? So if you need some to work in. Wow.
Yeah, huge hole.
Huge holes.
It's a very interesting feeling when you put soil in and it just disappears.
Our cameraman is wearing many hats.
I could probably get it done.
Yeah, I need to get it over here. I need to get a lot over on this side. There's a lot of holes in there.
I like to use a finger assist.
I do too. I can kind of
feel.
I can kind of feel the holes if I use my fingers. Yes, I know what you mean.
As long as it keeps sinking in, you keep doing it. And it's more like you put it in and you wiggle. You don't.
No, you don't stab.
Psycho. Yeah, this isn't psycho.
This isn't Psycho. This isn't Janet Leigh. Was it Janet Leigh?
Norman Bates. Yeah.
And we're not Norman Bates, yeah. She's not Janet Leigh, and we're not Norman Bates. Do you need any more over there, Carmen?
Sure.
We're going to stop.
And we could stop and regroup, yeah.
We'll stop here and tie it in.
Yeah. The other thing you know is if you're going right along the edge, sometimes it'll sink down on the edge for some reason. That's another spot that you have to make sure you get.
Do I hear a
work down? Good?
Oops, I found a hole. I found another hole. Oh, yeah. Another hole.
And this one's not done either. Boy.
Okay. Shall we tie her in?
Loose. Is the root loose?
Yeah, to where it gets straightened up.
We have years to correct things like that. That will happen. That will happen at some point.
This is kind of like the dead roots. You keep going, you find more little pockets. Okay.
Okay, so we're going to tie the tree into the pot now. We've worked the soil into the roots as much as we could into the under part of the root mass. So we're going to tie the tree in. We're using what's called a 4-point tie. So we need a little pigtail here. And when you're doing a 4-point tie, you want the last tie to be on the strongest part of the root mass. So we're going to start here. This is the strongest part, so this is going to be the last tie on this side. So we'll go from here over to here, and I'll let Carmen do that one since it's on her side.
Thanks. And
Pull, twist.
and you don't do it all, not all the way this time, and then we're going to go, and then the end tightens it.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be like stranglehold. Oops.
What?
There was a lot of slack in there.
Oh, yeah.
Pull, twist. Well, let's twist until we get down there, then we'll pull and twist. I'm going to cut some of that off.
And that's soft, so that's going to push against that.
Pull, twist. Pull, oh, shoot. I know what a...
What happened?
Well,
Your pigtail?
Yeah.
this is what you don't want to do.
We have an extra pigtail.
I have...
You already have the pigtail.
I'll just do this. This is what you don't want to do, because I cut it off. I was thinking I was going to shorten that so I could twist it easier. Well, gosh, no, you don't want to do that. But all is not lost.
On the fly pigtail.
All is not lost. So this one will come across like this. Do the tie in the middle.
So before you tighten everything, and this is going to tighten everything.
Yes, this should take the slack.
Do you want to slide something underneath this?
Oh, should have put a piece of, what
Something.
do I have? Oh, I know what I have.
Before I'm trying down on it. Because this would dig in. This would dig in pretty quickly.
Like that. Ah, there it is. Ta-da! Piece of this. Where's my scissors?
I think I put them on the side.
Put all the scissors away. I want a piece of that on this side as well, Carmen.
Okay, so there, a little piece of rubber.
I'll put a little piece on this root too. Thank you. This is to protect the roots because when we crank down on the wire, we don't want to damage the roots. At this point, we need all the healthy roots we got.
And the back we're okay. That matters. This way? Sure.
Pull, twist. Pull, twist.
And it's not really obvious, is it, that you can't see the whole thing,
No, you can't.
but
it does.
tightens the entire thing. It's like a little pocket that.
Twist. 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 Is that good? No.
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 See? You got faith in your own techniques.
Tempting fate there. Tempting fate. Okay, so now we have to finish off with the bonsai soil. First of all, though, I'm going to put a little bit of the starter fertilizer on, for recharging the soil. All these good nutrients and microbes and things like that I don't know if it really does any good, but it makes me feel better. So sometimes that's important too. Okay.
Thank you.
You need more over there? A little bit? A little bit there.
Okay. I'll get more. I need it.
So finding holes.
A little bit.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
like I kind of much more gently push it in, and then kind of rotate a little bit.
See there.
Yeah, and then you'll feel. But this is a much gentler. And also along the edge, sometimes I find things along the edge.
Do you need anything more over there?
Right here.
Right there? Oops, there's a hole right there. Yep. Oop, there's another hole.
Yeah, that's a.
Yep.
It's a narrow one, so it's a little tougher. I think I'm pretty good. Good. Good.
Laying low.
So if you want to say something.
Okay. Okay, so now we've finished the repot, And we're going to just kind of take another look at things and finish off our March work on these trees. This tree, Carmen's tree, is very nicely developed, except it needs the pad development. It's got the nice trunk. It's got shari, nice nabari. Um, I guess when I'm saying things like shari and gin and stuff like that, I kind of need to let you guys know what I'm talking about, huh? So when I'm talking about shari, I'm talking about these deadwood features on the trunk. These are added. These are actually added by the artist to give the trunk more interest. You can see this tree when it was initially started. Movement was not put into the trunk, but it actually has a graceful taper and graceful movement, but there's no twists or turns or anything like that. So to add interest to the trunk, the artist has put shari in here. The lifelines are starting to pump up and give it more interest. When I say gin, I'm talking about a deadwood feature where a branch is dead and has been maintained for the artistic value. So this would be a gin. So when I'm talking about gin and shari, that's what I'm talking about. Is this tree healthy? This tree is a little bit unhealthy. How do I know that? When I look at this tree, it's a little bit leggy, like in this area. This is leggy, this branch. It's not, if you compare that to, say, this branch, if you compare that to that, you can see how leggy this is. It's also got juvenile foliage, which is another indication that the tree is not all that happy. So if you can see here, when I say juvenile growth, what I mean is it's, instead of having the scale-like leaf foliage, it's got these needle-like leaf, the needle-like leaf foliage. So that's the difference between juvenile and mature growth. And the juvenile is an indication that the tree is not happy. So for this tree, right now we're going to fertilize it and see if we can get it a little bit stronger so we can continue with the branch and pad development. The the secondary and tertiary branch development on this tree.
I'm going to show you a progression, a series of photographs of a bonsai. This is this Shimpaku juniper that we've been working on. And I first got it in 1987 from a raffle at the Sacramento Bonsai Show. It was in a 4-inch plastic pot, so it cost me $1. And the thickness of the trunk was less than the width of a pinky finger. And I immediately put it in this pot and grew it for a few years. And you can see it's very ill. All this gray foliage, the top is good, the bottom is bad. So now we're going to see where we're at now. So this is in a bigger pot. It's this 2004, so it's in a common clay pot. And I've let it grow, and it's growing beautifully. So this looks pretty good. Our next one is that this is one of my favorites. So then this is my idea of working on a juniper bonsai. And I cut it back so I could get back budding, and I wired it, not knowing what I'm doing. This is a total disaster, but this is what I did because I didn't know any better. All right, our next one, this is 2009, a little bit better. So I took a workshop from Peter Adams in 2009. He had 2 classes to develop this. So this is where I started there. And you can still see how ill it is. It's not healthy. All of this discolored stuff. So I was not using insecticide to help this poor thing. All right. And that's just the same thing. And this is a trim that I did. And I'm thinking if this is Peter Adams, it may have been. We're going to go one more. All right, this is after Peter Adams. This is March 2009. And this is actually better than it was, so at least we've turned it back. We still have really bad, sorry, how did I do that? I touched it. I shouldn't have touched it. Okay, no, go away. All right, Still a lot of sick area, but at least I have a little bit better plan of where to go. Then we're going to, this is the theory when I wanted it to become a kind of a windswept slant, but you can see how this arc doesn't work very well. But for a year or two, we went with that. Then I was going to decide something else. This next is a Peter Adams, and this is much better. So we ginned this up here. We now have a slant style with that going up that way. One of the problems, and I can show you here, I was told to make my shari, if I made some ovals, then I could start with that and I could make that into shari and work it over time, and it looks so artificial, and it's terrible, and it really bothered me. So the next one, this is 2011. We're still the same direction. I now have it in a Walsall pot, which was very expensive. That really doesn't go with it. But for now, I thought, oh, I love this. I love this, and ended up not loving it. It's healthier now. So this is progress. That is 2015. Have I turned it yet? I don't think I have. Again, healthy. I haven't turned it yet. So this has a funky root right here, and then it curves. And I didn't like this curve. And then I still have these hideous ovals. So I didn't like it particularly. So we're going on. This is when I turned it. So this is in 2021. This is 2 years ago. And you can see, if I make this wider, I like this better. It's a little bit fuzzy. And then I have it in this pot. And that's still a growing pot, but at least it's a better pot. It's healthier. It looks like much, much nicer. I can turn it up a little bit. This is it growing out. This is probably the healthiest it has ever been. And then I worked on it after this. This is August 9th, 2022. So finally healthy. And that's the last one. And this is after, I think it was right after Peter T. worked on it. So we're starting to develop some pads. Still have a long, long way to go. So how many years is this? A lot. Yeah, since 1987. Do the math. It's a long, long time. And it still looks like this. So it's not well developed even now. Don't do what I did.
For the more refined trees, there's really not a lot. This tree was repotted in February into a smaller pot. And the only thing we're going to do to these, all of the necessary work was done last year. It was fertilized, sprayed for spider mites, scale, kept healthy, grow strong. This last year, all the necessary work was done to it. So we really don't have to do anything right now. The initial, pads are set up. We're just going to continue with the pad development. And just as an example, if you would look at this lower branch, this is kind of what we're going for in developing pads. This used to be just one big, thick, huge pad. As you develop the tree, you take those larger pads and separate them into smaller units. And you can see on this branch, we've separated this branch into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different little units. And now we're going to work on developing these little units to give this branch more complexity, more age. And we'll do this with all of the branches on the tree, try to separate them into into pads, into smaller pads to give it a look, more of a refined look, more of an aged look. The other thing that we're going to do to this tree, because it has this kind of uninteresting lower part of the trunk, and it's too thin. I would like to see a little more taper developed in this area. One way you can do that is by adding, if you add a shari to the back, I'm actually going to add shari in this area, and if you take out this part of the lifeline, it will bypass that and start pumping up on each side. So that will thicken the base a little bit to maybe give it some more taper. At least that's what I'm hoping will happen. So we'll add a little taper to that by putting shari in the back. If you look at trees where shari's been added, you can see that on each side of the shari, the lifeline bypasses it and actually gets bigger. So that's what's going to happen down here. Put the shari in the back, and the lifeline will bypass it and start pumping up on each side and make this thicker. So these two guys, we're just going to fertilize them, not fertilize them as aggressively as the younger trees. Going to use a lower nitrogen fertilizer on these for the rest of the year, and kind of slow down the growth so that the new growth doesn't get out of hand too quickly. It stays more compact. And so that's the plan for the year for these guys. Okay, so I want to share these photos. This tree was repotted in February, and I wanted to share with you the photos of this repot to give you an idea of the comparison between the repot that we did on our pre-bonsai and the root mass here and what we had to deal with. And then after a tree is worked on over a period of time, this one has probably been worked on for at least 10 years now. And so the root mass is developed. So I wanted to just share some pictures with you so you could see the difference in the roots between the pre-bonsai and the more finished bonsai. So this is the growing pot that we had it in. This is when we took it out of the growing pot. You can see that it's a nice tight root mass, a lot of fine roots there. This is another look at the root mass, a lot of really nice fine roots. So that makes the repotting very easy. And we can get this tree now into a smaller pot. We can really trim these roots down because we have a lot of very fine feeder roots to sustain the tree. So we can cut it back pretty hard and get it into this smaller pot. So now you can see the difference as to what happens as you work on the root mass from year to year, and from repot to repot, you continually improve the root structure so you can eventually get the tree into a nice small show pot. So hopefully this helps with an idea of the repotting process and the advantages of doing really good root work and continuing with the development of the root mass as well as the development of the top of the tree.
I'm recording now.
Okay, so we're kind of at the conclusion of our March segment for our Seasonal Bonsai Series. The last thing we're going to do to our trees is to fertilize them. We're going to use Osmocote on the trees that we're really trying to push growth on. So on the tridents, we're going to put Osmocote on the cutting, the pre-bonsai, and then the challenger, which we're trying to push growth on to get it stronger. So these three we're going to put Osmocote on. Put about a tablespoon on, if you'll notice my handy dandy customized fertilizer scoop here. It's very handy for getting into the bottoms of the fertilizer bag and getting around trees. It's very, very handy. So we put approximately a tablespoon of Osmocote for a pot about this size. Just sprinkle it around the top. See how nice you can reach around underneath the branches and stuff with this? It's very, very handy. Yankee ingenuity here. Okay, so that's all we're going to do to the deciduous ones. So now we'll move on to the conifers, to our Shimpaku junipers. On these, we have the three: the cutting, the pre-bonsai, and then the weak intermediate development bonsai. We want to get those guys healthy and push growth on those. So we are going to use Osmocote on these three. This one I'm going to put a little bit more on. It's a bigger pot, deeper pot. I'm going to put just a tad bit more Osmocote on that one. And then on this guy, we'll hopefully get this to push some really nice, strong, heavy new growth, and then we can start developing the pads. And then the last two, these are our more finished trees. And because we don't really want to push a lot of heavy growth on them, we want to kind of maintain the shorter internodes. We're going to use an organic fertilizer. I'm trying BioGold this year. This is the first year I've used this type of organic, but this is the Japanese BioGold. That's supposed to be the gold standard for organics for bonsai. So we're going to use that, and it's like 5 or 10 pellets per 12-inch pot. So the material looks like this. This is a little bit larger pot, so we're going to put about 15 pieces on this. So we're going to sprinkle this around, just place this around the edge. Hopefully the birds and the animals don't decide they like to eat this and carry it away. That's one of the problems with organics. So there we are. And then this is a little less. I think we're going to put maybe 15 for this one, 20 for that one. So we'll just put this around. Oops. I'm going to kind of push them into the soil a little bit. You notice that they made them kind of angular. I assume that that is so that they won't roll off. I'm going to press them into the surface of the soil a little bit, so
What's
that
the makeup of BioGold?
well, you know, if I could read Japanese, I could tell you. It has an NPK of 454, so it's a very low nitrogen, which is what you want when you don't want to really push really heavy growth on something. The Osmocote is, what is the Osmocote? It is 15912. So this is a high nitrogen fertilizer. It's going to push some serious growth on the trees. What's nice about this is it's a continuous release. You can put it on there. It's good for 3 to 4 months. So you don't have to worry about, reapplying fertilizer every month. BioGold is something that we're going to have to reapply fertilizer monthly. So a little bit more difficult to keep track of that, but supposedly it's supposed to be the best. So we'll see. The last thing I'm going to do is, because I have a very serious problem in my yard with the white scale that gets on the junipers. I haven't been real proactive in controlling it. I had a couple of years where it was very bad and my trees suffered. So it set them back a bit. They got unhealthy. So this year I'm going to be proactive, and I'm going to put the imidacloprid. Comes in various different forms. This is bonide granular. You can get it in liquid form. I'm going to put the granular on, and hopefully this will get a jump start on controlling the scale. Of course, I have to worry about spider mites, but I'll worry about that later. They don't really become a problem this early. I'm just going to sprinkle this on the surface of the soil, and then this is a systemic. So it will be, as it is dissolved into the soil, it will be taken up into the plant tissue, and anything that tries to feed on the plant tissue, or not anything, but if the aphids, this is good for aphids, for scale, things that chew on things that suck and chew. This will take care of them, except for spider mites. Spider mites are not insects. Spider mites are spiders. So they are not susceptible to the same insecticides that the that other insects are. So spider mites are a whole different ball game. And we'll deal with those a little bit later in the year when they start becoming a problem. I will only address health issues and maintenance issues as the year progresses, and how, at that particular moment in the year, on what we want to do to control things. So, and that just about finishes it off. So there we are, and that concludes our March work for our ABAS Bonsai Series and Seasonal Bonsai Series. So we'll see you maybe next month, maybe not till May. It depends on what happens with our trees. So we'll see what happens, and if we have something good to share with you next month, we'll go ahead and record it. If not, we'll just wait till May when we start doing more work on the deciduous trees. Junipers, we will probably wait. It won't do too much on those until more into summer, maybe June, July. They're just going to grow for now. So thank you.